Rhino. We welcome to the program now Paula Scanlan, Ambassador for Independent Women's Voice. Paula, good to see you.
Thank you for having me today.
So what brings you to town?
I'm here to help introduce some legislation that will help codify the term woman and female into law. The reason I'm doing that is because I was forced to compete alongside and undress alongside a man who identified as a woman. And now we have to go across the country and try to pass legislation to prevent that from happening to other young women and girls.
Right. We just talked to you not so long ago about all that. I don't know if you guys heard, but I shared a story earlier today related to this issue, and it comes from the Planet Fitness in Fairbanks, Alaska. You seen this?
Yes, I have.
This is crazy.
It's completely crazy. And the worst part about it is that the person who is in the locker room with these women doesn't even attempt to look like a woman.
Right.
This is exactly why we're passing these types of laws and legislation, is because it's opening the door for anyone and everyone who wants access to young women and young girls. They can just do that because they identify as such. That's why it sounds so silly. It sounds like common sense and everyone should be on the same page. But unfortunately, we have to put this stuff into law, or we can't know that our young girls are going to be protected when they're in these spaces.
And in this case, the company, Planet Fitness, defended their policies and their positions, they basically said, we allow people to go wherever they want based on how they identify from a gender perspective. But the question is, and what I said when we were discussing it, there was a 12-year-old girl, as you probably know, that was in the locker room that was witnessing this fully developed grown man with, I think, his genitals exposed in the female locker room there. Well, what about that person's rights? Why don't we seem to be concerned about that?
Exactly, and the same thing happened to me when I was on my team at the University of Pennsylvania. We went on this training trip, and there were girls as young as 4 and 5 years old that were changing next to a 6'4" tall man with male genitalia who went by Leah Thomas. And these girls' parents, I don't know if they were aware that he was there. We can't allow young girls to go through those things, and we don't know. I mean, obviously, there's much worse things that can happen too. There's stories of girls being abused in bathrooms and all these different spaces. So it's such a crazy thing that we're even having this conversation to begin with. But unfortunately, right, because of these stories like at Planet Fitness, again, like one of these pops up every week. I think I have me on next week and we'll have a different story.
Seems daily to me, honestly.
Yeah. So it's unfortunately you have to put this into law, and it's silly that we even have to advocate for it, but we do have to do it. Wow.
So as I recall, we had the event at here locally at River Hills where the governor made a statement. The first time I heard it at that time, Riley Gaines, of course, also present, made a statement that I think that the word woman appears in state statute some 400 times or so. Right, and then the question is, okay, exactly who's that referring to, which it does seem crazy that we have to pass a law defining what a woman is and a man.
Yeah, and the reason for it, so right, we have this word woman. So the word woman and female is used 204 times in Mississippi statute.
Okay, thank you.
And that word, right, because nobody can agree on it. A sitting Supreme Court justice doesn't know what a woman is because she claims she's not a biologist. Which is completely crazy because, again, right, I'm not a veterinarian, but I know what a dog is. I'm sure you do too. So that one, Riley, that's like one of her great lines. So I just borrowed that from her. But it's just such a weird thing because we have this word woman and it's been written into law. And again, when these laws were made, everybody knew what that word meant. And now we have unelected bureaucrats that can go in and say, well, the word woman is here. And I think that the word woman means this. And they can allow anyone to be in these spaces. So again, this bill that we're advocating for really just defines that word. So unelected bureaucrats and people can't go in and just say, well, this word woman that I see right here, it means what I want it to mean. We have to say it means what it was intended to mean, what everybody, 15 years ago knew what it meant.
So I think it's fair to say that Mississippi is, just because of the structure of our government and kind of our philosophy here, seems to be on board with this one bill in particular that, passed our House, 1607. That's been transmitted to the Senate, I believe, that would codify essentially the various genders of male, female, boy, girl, and goes through the detailed definition of that, which pretty much, I think, puts kind of a fence around what is truly a male and a female, et cetera. But on the other hand, Paula, you know, there are other states that are going in the opposite direction, right? They're putting laws in place that says, no, it's based on your identity. Thus, a fully developed male could just go wherever they want.
Yeah, I'm from the Northeast, so I know that very, very well. In California, there are nearly 1,000 men that are trying to transfer into women's prisons. Alone, right? And now in California, they're putting condoms into women's prisons. How insane is this world that we're living in? So yes, in Mississippi, there's some obviously more common sense down here, and obviously we have better luck. But there are states and there are women across this country in these more liberal states that are not protected. We've even heard stories of women going to shelters, domestic violence shelters, after being abused, and their abuser follows them in and says, you have to let me in, I identify as a woman. And these states allow that to happen.
Yeah, what could go wrong there? Because haven't we already seen examples of, was it New Jersey, I think, where they allowed the same, and they ended up with several of the females becoming pregnant in the women's prison, right?
Yes, in New Jersey, that's happening. They're having pregnancies in a women's prison. I mean, I honestly, when I first heard these stories, I said that this can't be real. There is no way we're actually having this conversation right now, but it is true, and this is happening. And again, that's why you put these laws in. You do it early, and it's a common sense bill. Again, it doesn't really create any new laws or any new protections. It's really to define these words so that when people look at the word woman, we all know what it means, and we're all speaking the same common language.
Yeah. So have you talked through your contacts here in the state of Mississippi, or you personally, to any members of the Senate just to kind of gauge their attitude towards this legislation, which passed in the House?
Yeah, we've been having meetings, sort of. That's what I'm here doing. I was here yesterday and today. Still, meeting with different people, but obviously, the conversations we've been having are very supportive of this. I think that we're going to have success on it. I know that we will. I know that Mississippi, we have more common sense legislators than other states. So that has been a really hopeful experience. And it's been great to be down here. Obviously, everyone's so nice, and a lot nicer to me than the people in my liberal home state of Connecticut.
Man. Just looking at the vote on this legislation in the House, it looks to me, just eyeballing it, that it pretty much passed on party lines. That there may have been, just looking at it, a couple of Republicans. I don't think so, though. Based on what I see, it looks like it was all Republicans that supported this legislation in the House, and a number of Democrats that voted against it. But I just wonder, what's their objection to this just process of defining what a male and a female is?
A lot of, I always wonder the same thing, but there's a lot of people sort of in the Democratic Party that identify as trans or whatever, and they want access to these spaces. And so these politicians are forced to listen to them, even though it's such a small number. I mean, even most Democrats agree that this is completely crazy. Again, I know a lot of people in my area, from very liberal area, that agree with me. Of course they agree, because this has never been a political issue before the last couple of years. And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of these really small group of people, they're very loud, and they really hold their politicians hostage almost, and make them stand for nonsense and craziness that we all disagree with. And unfortunately, I really hope to see that. But in the past, we've had luck with bipartisan support on this particular piece of legislation in other states. I think there was, I don't know if I'm correct on this, but I think there are 3 Democrats voted
with the Republicans
okay. On this. Yeah.
HB 1607. I'm looking at the vote, just kind of eyeballing it now. So, I feel like this thing ought to go through the Senate and get passed in the Senate. What about the Lieutenant Governor? Have you heard where he stands on this?
I haven't talked to him yet,
okay.
But I'm sure, again, this is a common sense bill. I can't imagine there is anyone, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, that disagrees with this. Whether they vote that way, that's a different story, because, but I think that most people, and again, studies show and polls show that 85% of Americans agree that they know what a woman is. They agree that men should not be in women's sports and other women's spaces. So I think we'll have good success on this.
Okay. Well, we'll be watching. I think it's pretty clear the governor would sign such legislation if it gets to his desk. I think he totally supports it.
Yep.
So are you, before we go, are you traveling the country just championing your cause here?
Yeah, we go across the country. We work with other states to try to also pass this. We also do a lot of other things. We put pressure on the NCAA, for example, to change their policies. So it's just wherever we're needed to really raise people's voices up, and whether there's other women and girls who are being subjected to this treatment, and we try to help them as well. So it's really just everywhere and anywhere.
Appreciate you coming on, Paula, and thank you for being brave and getting out on this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And
we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.